You've heard of the man who went out and bought a boomerang. Says he decided he wanted to have some fun. So he bought the boomerang and threw it out in the air. And of course, it circled in an arc and came back to him. Great fun. So he threw it out again, learned how to handle it right, threw the boomerang out, circled up in the sky, came back to him again, picked it up. Did this for a long time, had great fun with the boomerang, which always came back to him. Then he tried to throw it away because he got tired of it. And the boomerang came back. And he wanted to throw it away again, but it was in the nature of the boomerang to come back, so it kept coming back to him. He couldn't get rid of it. Now, I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, and here's the question. What is the boomerang in your life that you're trying to throw away, but it keeps coming back to you? Doesn't it? Of course it does. And you've got 1,000 exercises in your mental arms to throw that boomerang out, and the next morning it's there again. Shall I tell you what it is? A major one. You can all nod your heads internally to this. What you're trying to push away from you, and you have never succeeded up till now in doing, what you're trying to get rid of desperately is self-doubt. Right? Haven't you noticed how your mind churns around all during the day? And at certain times you have what is called feeling good. You feel a little bit secure because some external event or some thought of your own comes up, and you think for a little bit that you've solved the problem of that heartache, that pain, that memory, that self-accusation. You think you've solved the problem. You think you've thrown it away finally, but it is never in the nature of the heartache to go away the way you're trying to get rid of it. See, the evidence of our wrong behavior in life, of our wrong actions, the evidence is so clear, so much right in front of us. The evidence being, and you know it, that you have not solved your problems. No matter what you've done, no matter how you kid yourself about it. If you've got rid of one problem, it's simply because you traded it for a second one. Therefore, the fundamental self-doubt remains. You know how much we've talked about man's false identity, that he picks up a sense of self, a wrong sense of self, from becoming successful, or, and listen to this, or from suffering. And he says, well, I'm a suffering human being at least. Maybe I'm a martyr. And so a man and a woman seeks 1,000 ways to get an identity, hoping that one out of the 10,000 or 50,000 will be permanent, and it never will as long as you are under the hoax that you presently are. Something drastic is going to have to be initiated by you. What's going to have to happen is for you to meet someone or something who is unlike you. I said you're going to have to meet someone who's unlike you so that you can listen to something that is not a part of your present nature. And oh, what a difficulty we're in now. You see, whether you're aware of it or not, you always associate, cling with, flock together with thoughts, other people, events, experiences that are already like you. You associate with the familiar, you associate with your old thoughts, your own aims, your own fallacies. You associate, in short, with everything that is already like you, with your friends, with your relatives, with your ambition. And the last thing most human beings want to find is a man, a woman, a circumstance, a truth that is unlike themselves. They don't want that at all. That's the last thing they want, is to find something that is different, because then that means a challenge to their false sense of certainty that they already have it made and know what it's all about, in spite of all the evidence. When you meet truth, a particle of it, when you meet it for the first time, there's a sensing from your old nature that you are meeting something that is unlike you, and you begin to get nervous, and you want to push it away, and you want to run away, and you want to find excuses and justifications for not wanting what you have encountered, because you think that it's a threat to you. And how incredible that a human being will push away the one thing that could rescue him, because he's afraid that it's going to hurt him. Not seeing that his hurt is in remaining as he is. Isn't your Monday a repetition of Sunday, and a Sunday a repetition of Saturday? And then forward through the week again, isn't everything exactly the same? You know very well it is. You know that you have nothing new in your life. You have nothing solid to stand on. And that self-doubt keeps nagging at you, keeps making you cry. All right. Where is the problem? Now you listen carefully, and don't assume that you already understand what I'm going to say. That would push away the real reward that you'll get from it. In your present incorrect thinking, which is there, otherwise you wouldn't suffer as much from hostility, from fear, and so on. In your incorrect thinking, you actually believe that the problem is out there. You actually believe that the difficulty is in that condition, or in that past condition, or in that wife, or in that husband, or in the boss. You will do anything to cling to this self-deception that the problem exists out there. Because if you were to suspect the truth that the problem is, now listen, if you were to suspect that the problem is 100% yours, that means responsibility on your part, doesn't it? That means a jolt. That means you're going to be hit very hard, because you are going to have to give up actually millions of thoughts from the past in which you say that other person, because of his behavior, that is why I am in heartache. That is why I have self-doubt. All the time, all their lives, most human beings insist absolutely that the world is at fault, and if it would change, they would feel better. Well, the world is changing all the time out there. How come you don't feel better? Self-doubt must continue to haunt you until you understand that the self you're trying to find security for is non-existent. You're trying to build up a system of ideas about yourself that you hope will feel solid, and it can never happen. Only the absence of all acquired ideas, opinions about yourself, only the absence of those can ever change anything, which you'll see for yourself as you go along with things. Because human beings have not found themselves, because they have not emptied themselves of all their thoughts, all their ideas. Follow this. They go into a dreadful pain, which I will describe to you. I'm describing your life. They go into a dreadful pain called wrong seriousness. Look how dull you are with your kind of seriousness. What you call earnestness. What you call intensity. You're wasting your life with the kind of serious aims you now have, because they are all wrapped around you perpetuating the hoax by which you have lived and suffered up until now. If you could begin to see through, just tonight, begin to see how all your so-called serious ideas are simply one or another form of depression. If you could see that what you call being earnest is a form of despondency and gloom based on delusion, if you could see that, you would begin to break out from going from darkness to a beautiful sunshine. Let me tell you a story that will show what we're talking about. Here's a businessman, and he's told about a piece of property that is supposed to be very valuable out in the country, let's say. And so he goes out there, and when he gets out there, there's the real estate man waiting for him. And he shows him around the house and shows him around the large area, there's hills in back. And all the time that the real estate salesman is showing him around the house and the property, other possible clients are also being shown around. So there's a lot of people looking over the property. And the man is told how valuable it is and that the price is quite reasonable and you better get it right away before someone else buys it. And he sees the other buyers there. And the price pretty high, but he begins to get serious over buying the property. And he thinks he'd better get it before someone else does. And other things come up that make him want to buy it. For example, a very attractive girl comes along. She stops her car and she looks out and talks to him. She says, "I live down the street. Be nice to have you in the neighborhood." And he looks at her and his heart flutters a little bit. And you see, he's already gone into imagination, as people do in situations like that. Don't they? Don't you? You know what I'm talking about. And so the girl smiles at him and says, "Nice to have you as a neighbor. Be sure you buy the house." Other things, sort of things like that happen, which make him think that he'd better buy it fast before someone else does. So after 3 or 4 hours of looking around, it's quite a large bit of property, he drives back to the village where he's staying overnight and goes to the motel and is very earnest about thinking about buying it. And he's worried about losing it. And he remembers the girl. And he remembers what the real estate man said, that it will increase in value in 6 months. And he better get it now. He goes out to dinner shortly after that and sits at a booth at the back of the cafe and has his dinner. And as he has it, as he's having his dinner, he hears the voice of this girl that he met. And she's talking with a man. And he suddenly realizes that they're in the next booth. And they can't see him because of the partition. Are you ahead of me? Why aren't you ahead of yourself in life then? See, you can follow a story when it's an illustration, when someone tells you. But you walk right into the same situation yourself because you're carried away by your old nature. So as he sits there and listens, the light begins to dawn, doesn't it? And here's what he realizes. The whole thing was a con game. The whole thing was a hoax set up for the very purpose of drawing him in, making him think that he's going to get something valuable, and if he didn't get it, that he'd lose out. And by the way, do you understand that the fear of loss is one of the most persistent naggings that we have? What do you have that you value now? I'll guarantee you, if you're not living from who you really are, one of your doubts is going to center around you losing that. Someone younger coming along and taking their place down at the office. someone coming along and taking your property or whatever it might be. You might go home tonight and ask yourself what you fear losing and investigate that to see where you have got something all mixed up, where you have identified with your possession. That is, you think it gives you an identity, and the thought of losing this or that causes you to shake, only it really isn't you shaking at all. It's simply some thoughts that you take as being you. But back to the man in the booth. He sits there, and it dawns on him, of course, that the whole thing was a show, a theatrical production. All the other people walking around, all calculated to deceive him into buying the property at a price where he would lose his money. Now, I want you to listen to me. You won't understand what I'm going to say. It's much too enormous. It's much too overwhelming. But you can hear the words, you can hear the description. And then you could go home and you begin to ponder it and apply it personally to you. Because you've all been taken in. You've all been deceived to the depth which you do not know. And I'll tell you where you've been deceived. It's going to be too much. I've warned you. And I'm going to tell you. Your whole life is a hoax. You have believed what people tell you. You've fallen for the attractions. You think if you don't do this, you're going to miss out. And do you know that it's a very rare human being who ever sits in the spiritual booth, so to speak, and right in front of him, he hears the hoax being exposed. It is happening tonight. I am telling you about the entire life situation that you are involved in, and you, today and yesterday and 10 years ago, you walked around that property and you listened to what the people said. And you were gullible. And you wanted to believe certain things. You wanted to believe that you're going to get a bargain or whatever. Only all the con men, there are only a very few in that story. But everyone you met in your life has deceived you in one way or another, because they were just as lost as you were. It is time for you to wake up and see, put two things together. Put through the idea of wrong seriousness, false earnestness. Wasn't the man serious or in earnest about getting that? And wasn't he suffering from fear of loss? You put all these facts together, and you will finally see that all your pain, all the pressures, all the anxiety was unnecessary because you didn't see what was put over on you. You were taken over by your desires as you walked around and you saw the hill in back of the home. You figured out how you could use it for your personal benefit. And all the time you were thinking all these things, you didn't know, because you weren't told, that the very foundation of the house itself was beginning to crumble. And the man who was showing you around made sure that you didn't see that. I tell you that you have wasted your tears. You have wasted your pain. They are unnecessary, because you don't need to be on the tour in the first place, you see. But you asked for it because you said, I need something, I want something, and there are plenty of con people around to offer it to you. Fact. Here's the fact. Right now, as you are listening to me, unknown to yourself, you don't know it. You don't know it. I am telling you that you don't see it. You are under a hoax. You're believing it. You're going along with it. You're suffering from it. And I am telling you tonight, you had better remember what you've heard, because I have exposed for you. You're sitting in the booth and you're hearing the whole thing being clarified for you right in front of you. You're hearing the facts. You're seeing through it. Then are you going to go out of here? Are you going to go out of here with a new attitude that says something like this? All right, I'll look into things. I'll look into seeing where I'm anxious over something. I'll see whether that is indeed a hoax, that I don't have to be anxious at all. I'm telling you, you don't have to be anxious at all. Because you're anxious because you have all these doubts about yourself based on a false idea of who you are. Very, very sadly, let me tell you something sad about you. I mean, too bad. It's too bad that you persist in it and keep it going. Think with me now. Have you ever noticed how you're afraid in life with other people and in life in general? Have you ever noticed that you're afraid that you're not going to get a warm welcome? Oh, come on. Come on. Wherever you go, you hope you're going to see someone smiling at you. You hope you're going to meet someone that tells you that you're okay. Come in and be welcome. As long as you want, listen, as long as you want to be welcomed by this world, you are going to be its victim, because you are first of all the victim of your own delusions. Look where we've tracked it back to. Don't you ever again blame those people who put on the stage performance for you, as they did with that man. If you blame them, and just to begin with, you're being dishonest, aren't you? Look, when that man walked out of that booth after hearing what he had heard, when he walked out of that booth, was he still in conflict? Did he still have any problems over worrying about whether I should buy that property or not? When he knew the facts, he was free. Likewise, when you can see what is going on inside of you that shouldn't be going on inside of you, greed and acquisitiveness, wanting to be ahead of other people, wanting certain ideas that'll give you comfort, wanting to be well. When you see what is wrong inside yourself, you'll see that the only reason people can ever deceive you is because you have first allowed yourself to be deceived by your own mind. Think of the liberty and the real quietness that is just ahead of you when you walk out of that booth having seen through the whole stage performance, that you permitted other people to play on you because you wanted something from them. I cannot describe to you the relief you'll have. But what you can do, you can think of the pressure you have. You can think of the anxiety you have. You can think of the yearnings, the false yearnings that you have. And then I will tell you, if you want them to evaporate, they will. So never again, ever go anywhere in this life, and I said anywhere, to a friend's house, to your own house, to the employment agency. Don't go anywhere hoping that other people will welcome you. This means you're weak, and they will know it. And the con game begins, because they studied you. They looked at your eyes. And they looked at your manner. And even though they're filled with self-doubts themselves, they can recognize you. They saw you coming. When they looked at you, their own self-doubt started to stir up. And they said, I am going to find out who I really am by getting something from him or her, whatever they want from you. Could be 1,000 things. You know that. And so they deceive you in an attempt to make themselves feel secure, but that won't work. It can never work because it could never work in your case. And so we have two pathetic human beings meeting and hurting each other. Will you learn what it means to walk through this whole world all by yourself? All by yourself, accompanied by your real nature. See, that's what it means to walk all by yourself. The something, your real nature, have something higher than what you were before. Do that and you can walk anywhere in complete freedom and nothing can ever harm you again. Men and women look out at the world and weep. And what they weep is, so much is expected of me, so much is demanded of me. Everyone and everything seems to have a claim on my time and on my services and on my very life. And this cry is daily, and it's painful. They say, why was this great burden put on me here in this life? Everyone wants something, and I'm unable to deliver it. And even when I do, they want more. There doesn't seem to be an end to the demands upon my whole life and my energy and my finances. Everybody wants something from me. Why? And you learn right now that that is a false question. It's a question coming out of ignorance, of a lack of understanding of who you are and what you're supposed to be doing here in this world. You know, if you were here to try to satisfy everyone, you can see for yourself it could never succeed, correct? And it never has. Because when you make that cry, in one sense, it is correct. There's no way you can satisfy the demands. There's no way you can give the world what it demands from you. And if you think that you can ever achieve that position by power, by wealth, by security, you are deluding yourself. So what's the problem? Here's the person who cries out, who shakes, and is very angry at this world, who seems to be pressurizing him all the time. At the very same time that this individual is lamenting his lot in life, at the same time he or she is declaring that he or she understands already what life is all about. I want you to know, at the very start tonight, that the inability to see contradictions in oneself is a very basic problem. And I've given you one already. Here's a person who cries out and says, I don't understand why everyone wants something from me. And yet, there is another part inside that individual that says, I know what life is all about. I know what I am all about. I know exactly how to vote at the next election. And I know exactly what books to read. I know exactly what social formulas to follow. I know what life is all about, this person is saying. And what they know is false. What they know is that life is something in which you have to go out and fight for yourself. Fight to keep yourself intact, not knowing that that really means that they don't understand it, to keep your ego intact. Why should you keep your ego intact? Why don't you just let it fall away? But that question never comes to an individual. So a person says, unconsciously to himself, he's not aware that he's saying this, he says to himself, assures himself, while shaking about it, I already know what life is all about. Don't tell me. I have my religion. I have my philosophy. I have my ways of action. Don't tell me to do anything else, because this is the way it should be. This is the way I know is best for me. All right, now that's one side of it. That's the South Pole. South Pole over here. Way over here is the North Pole. And what's on the North Pole? A wrecked life. A nervous life, a life that has no contentment. And a life that starts off in the morning and doesn't really end till the next morning, of agitation, of confusion. And how do you like this one? A day of constant self-doubt, in which a person searches around and he says, now, this association or this activity or this thought or this philosophy or going here, going there, is going to give me assurance, and I'll never doubt myself again. And he comes out of the building or out of the house or whatever, and he goes right back into shaking because he doesn't know who he is. Look at the world of distance then. By the way, think of distance psychologically from now on. Can you do it right now in a very simple way? Do you live with someone that you're within a few yards of all day long, and you're 1,000 miles apart from them psychologically? Think of it that way. So, here's a person in contradiction, insisting that he understands what is best for him, how to serve himself, and at the other pole, with all the world in between, is the results of living out his insistence. No wonder you can walk down any street and see tearful, lost people. No wonder nobody knows what to do about anything. They really don't. And you sense that, and it scares you, and because it scares you, you do the wrong thing. You go into a wrong philosophy for yourself, life philosophy, and you join the gang. Maybe people watch you as you walk down the street, and they see your fixed eyes and your angry expression, or they see the emptiness in your eyes. Maybe they are doing the same thing that you are doing to them, and that is right, and that is the whole world. So human beings, caught in this contradiction of saying they understand, and yet the results say the exact opposite, caught in this, try to do something about it. And everything they do only makes it worse, of course. Because if you start from a wrong idea, you're going to go ahead and produce wrong results. But here's what they do. Here's what human beings do in order to ease the pain, which never happens, of course. They say, I have to gain something. And then, I have to gain something. And then they start talking about what they're going to gain. I'm going to gain more respect from people. I'm going to gain a lot of friends. I'm going to gain activities. I'm going to gain a new religion, a new philosophy, a new way of thinking toward myself and toward life. I'm going to gain a new residence, a physical house. I'm going to gain education, on and on and on and on. They say that, and they do it, and they stay the same. And it never occurs to them that the results, that what they get is always the same as what they got before from doing the very same thing. Now, let's see how startling the next thought is to you. See if it shakes you even just a little. And if you're receptive to it, if you're open to it, it might just do that. We found that everybody thinks that if he can gain something, add something to himself, that things are going to be different. He's going to feel better. He's going to be more popular or whatever. If adding something to your life, if going out and getting something doesn't work, then what might? I'll tell you what might. I'll tell you that what will work magnificently if you see it through to the very end. Which is so simple. Look how simple it can be stated, which I will now do. Instead of acquiring something, lose something. Well, now, doesn't that make perfect sense? You should understand that there's a cause of your confusion, of your feeling cheated. There's a cause of you looking around hoping that there's someone stronger than you are, and you never find him, and even if you did, you wouldn't want him, because weakness never wants strength. So you say, you might think in a new way. You might say, well, look, you're thinking logically now. You say, now look, here is the way I am. Confused, chaotic, quarreling with myself and with other people. And I heard the fact stated that the way out was to lose something. Why didn't I think of that years ago? To lose what I presently am, because I am my thoughts in a certain sense. I am my own unhappiness. There's not me who is and another thing which is unhappy. I am the whole business of unhappiness. It's just one thing. So it only makes sense for me to lose something instead of trying to gain something. Also, if I were to ask all of you tonight to tell me what happiness is, you'd have to pause for a long time before you answered, wouldn't you? Well, and then your mind would begin operating, and then you would think of happiness according to your own ego glorification. Happiness would be elected to high office. Happiness would be be so successful that my parents or my wife or my friends would admire me. See, it all centers around itself. So it doesn't make any sense at all to pursue happiness. How can you pursue it when you don't know what it is? All you have is ideas, suppositions as to what it amounts to, and you pursue that and you find out that it isn't that at all, because after you get your own idea, you're still unhappy. You've got the idea of happiness, which is money or whatever, and when you get that, you're still as, how about this phrase, you're still as nervous as you were before. When you say that unconscious and unseen nervousness is one of the great destructive and driving forces in this world, you know it is, because you know yourself. Well, what a marvelous message so far, coming from truth. That we all have to begin doing something the exact opposite of what we've been doing before. We should just start losing ideas and opinions and very, very bad thinking and emotional habits. Now, you've tried your own way. You've insisted that you know the road to happiness, and you've walked it for a long time. That has not worked. Why don't you have the honesty to say that doesn't work, and then say, I'm going to stop wasting my time on something that doesn't work, and I'm going to try this opposite of seeing, first of all, what does it mean to start to lose things? Wouldn't you agree that you would feel better physically, spiritually, mentally if you lost your anger? Wouldn't you? But you're afraid of that. Because if you were to lose anger, you would lose yourself, because you and your anger are one thing. And that's what you treasure. So here we are, caught in a very dreadful contradiction, and look, and afraid to see the fact of it. Because we're afraid that if we see the fact of it, something is going to be required of us. something that's going to require us to be shaken up, to shake up all our habits, our whole lifestyle. We are afraid to go through something new and different. And unless you do go through something new and different, you will never understand what life is all about. And you'll never ever have the possibility of being a free and authentically good human being. You know the phrase, one's own worst enemy? Would you say that applies to everyone you know? Don't you know people who are wrecking their lives by the way they act, by the way they think, and by their stubborn refusal to investigate something other than their present ways? Of course you do. And you know in yourself that this is the way you are operating. So let's take one of these human beings and put him on a bus. He goes to a bus stop, and he's going to travel and have a nice time, he thinks. And when he gets on the bus, the driver in his nice, sharp uniform and hat, a little decoration on it somewhere, the bus driver gets this average man on the bus and tells him, we're going to have a nice trip. It'll be enjoyable, you can relax, and at the end of the destination, you'll be a happy human being. So he gets on the bus with several other people, lots of other people, sits toward the back where he can see the other passengers in the bus, and the bus starts off over mountains and through deserts and valleys. But he's a little tired. He decides to doze a little bit while he's traveling, so that's what he does. He leans back, closes his eyes, and the bus goes on. And as he dozes, he begins to notice that the bus is, after a while, the bus begins to move a little faster than it seems necessary. And notice that there's sudden jerks and pulls as the bus seems to be going around the corners a little too sharp. But he's in the habit of dozing already, and so he keeps dozing. And we're talking about human beings on their journey, you understand that? So after a while, one of the other passengers gets up and comes over and whispers something to him. And what this passenger whispers is, you better see who's driving the bus. But he's still dozed and tired, so he doesn't pay any attention. And he knows that increasingly the bus is going much, much wilder than before. In fact, he's beginning to get a little worried about it. Aren't you worried about the way your life is speeding along that highway? You are, and you know it. Aren't you? You'll have to admit it. Look, you're dozing in the bus, hoping to keep out the awareness of that something is going wrong. But you can't sleep, can you? You don't sleep very well, do you? Something keeps haunting at your mind that there's something wrong with the trip, with the life. Well, our passenger continues to doze, and a little later, another passenger gets up and whispers the same thing to him. He says, you better see who's driving the bus. Well, our passenger continues to doze, and a little later, another passenger gets up and whispers the same thing to him. He says, you better see who's driving the bus. And he doesn't understand that, so he goes back to sleep. After a couple of days of this, he notices that all the people who had warned him about the bus driver have disappeared. They've got off the bus in some way. And this scares him a little bit more. He doesn't understand what is happening on the trip any more than human beings understand what is happening in their life trip. And so they go to sleep, spiritual sleep. Finally, one last man gets up and says to him, you better see who's driving the bus. Finally, he can't take the uncertainty anymore. He doesn't want to go to sleep and pretend that all is well. So he gets up and he goes to the front of the bus, and what he sees is a wild-eyed hijacker who's taken the bus over. And now he understands why the trip was so rough and why he was in danger, so he waits till the next stop and slips off himself and gets over that trip. An awful lot is said in spiritual teachings about the necessity of waking yourself up instead of leaning back and dreaming that all is well. Dreaming and trying to assure yourself that your ways are going to bring you out safe at last. Haven't you ever inspected your own life enough to see through that fallacy, that folly, that all is well? You know that it isn't well. And when the truth comes along and tries to tell you different, you push them away and say, let me sleep, and you go back and doze. Well, who's driving your bus? What wild-eyed maniac has taken over, and you have surrendered your right to drive through life as you wish? You've sold it all for temporary sleep, temporary comfort. I'll tell you, learn whatever you do before another day goes by. Learn what it means to deliberately, consciously, voluntarily arouse yourself out of your sleep. You are in it. You are in it, and you don't know it. Something about you knows it. By the way, your friends sense it. They don't understand what's going on, but they know it because they see you operate throughout your day. They hear you unable to stop talking. They see the wildness in your eyes. They see how you look out in the world and feel oppressed. They know it, but you don't know it. You don't know it. You simply suffer from it. And you try to do the impossible by shoving away the horrible realities, which you call horrible, by shoving them away with beautiful dreams. Leaning your head back on the bus, closing your eyes, and dreaming of a beautiful future. Dreaming of something coming along to the rescue. Why don't you do what I'm going to illustrate for you right now? Do it spiritually, psychologically. Why don't you straighten up in the bus? Fight the sleep! Fight it by straightening up, opening your eyes, looking around. Look out that window and see where you are. You're on the edge of a cliff. Don't you read in the newspaper or see on TV every night that people go over the cliff? That is, they suffer some kind of a disaster to themselves. You name the disaster. And human beings suffer from it because they don't wake up and see where they are and go to the front of the bus and see that their whole life up to this point has been one shaking and trembling after another because they've sold everything for a few hours of slumber. You study now, long and hard, what I've just illustrated to you. The idea of arousing yourself out of your sleep, and it will hurt. I am telling you, it will hurt because you're not used to waking yourself up. You're used to laying back and just dreaming. And when you begin to shatter a dream, the dream itself screams in protest, do it anyway. Good will happen to you, not bad. You see, you now take the dream state which you live in and which takes over your whole life. You take that as being the good state. Are you saying that it's good to be in mental pain? How could something bad be something good? You're putting labels on things and deceiving yourself that way. You put a label on a can of nails and call that print on the label peaches. It's still nails inside the jar, inside the can. You try to eat those nails and you're going to suffer. And somehow we know we have done this. We prefer to put the label on so we can put an end to all intelligent thinking. We're afraid to explore beyond our own infantile minds. For fear we'll find something that will be infantile. You don't know that you're in it already. Maybe I better tell you the story about the little boy who learned to count to 10. There was a little boy who went to school, and the teacher told him how to count up to 10. Took a little time, but when you're young, it takes time to learn such a simple task as that. But eventually, he learned how to count up to 10. And when he did, he was very proud of himself. Because he knew that his younger brother and sister at home couldn't count up to 10, and he could. So he counted up to 10 lots of times just to kind of show off to people that he had accomplished something. One morning when he came back to school, the teacher said, "Now, Billy, I want to teach you something new." And he said, "But wait a minute, teacher, I've learned to count up to 10. Do you want to hear me count up to 10? And so he counted up to 10. The teacher said, "Fine, that was fine. Now I understand that you can count up to 10. But I want to teach you something other than that. And it's called counting up to 20. And little Billy looked at the teacher and he didn't like what he heard. He wanted to repeat over and over and over and over what he had already learned and not make any new effort. So he counted up to 10 again. The teacher said, "No, I want to teach you to count up to 20. So he resisted and resisted, and the point is very clear. We have to abandon our stage performances wanting to show off before life and before ourselves and become real. And then in that reality is something that is limitless, self-limitless, something that is always new. Nature, with a capital N, goes out into the world and plants millions and millions of trees. Those trees are very small at the start. They're born. And the trees grow up and mature and grow stronger. And then at a certain point in the existence of a tree, it begins to fade and to lose its powers. And finally it fades out altogether. Now, that's the story of an individual tree, which nature plants, gives life to, and eventually nature takes the life away from the tree. Now, here's the question. Don't miss it. Do you want to be an individual tree, or do you want to be the powerful nature principle behind the planting of the tree? Don't miss it now. Nature, I call it nature, you want to call it God, nature with a capital N, plants millions of trees, individual trees. The trees grow up and they fade out, but nature keeps reproducing trees in physical expression. But the point is, which do you want to be part? Now, you can be an individual tree if you want, and you'll be a madman. You'll be a mad tree, if you can picture such a thing as that. You'll be an insane, separate entity here on earth. And all human trees, therefore, are they not afraid of the ending of their own individual existence? See, we're talking about human beings and trees, same thing, if you understand that. A human being is born into this world through nature. We're brought into it. You grow up, mature, you get a little older, and Nature then says, time for this particular physical expression of the all, capital A, to fade out and disappear. Okay, fine. See? No problem. No problem unless you would prefer to be, unless you choose to be a separate tree, fighting to be more fruitful, more magnificent, more glorious than the other tree. If you choose that, then you will be afraid of old age, whether a human being or a tree, and you'll begin to worry that you're not young anymore. You know, you start to be afraid of old age when you're 10, right? You begin to notice Grandma and Grandpa, and they can hardly make it across the room, and you kind of sense that you're that tree, that hobbling tree. Which do you want? Are you going to insist upon being a separate tree? Some are nut trees, aren't they? Thought I'd get that in. A separate tree seeking to be in competition with all the other trees, that kind of stupidity. Or would you rather be a part of the whole principle of nature, which can never die, which can never perish? You see, you have to understand, the now, the all, nature, God, expresses itself in the physical world in trees and human beings. And they come and they go. Obvious enough, correct? Which do you want to be a part of then? The time expression or the eternal power? The way to cease being an egotistical, isolated tree, it's a way to cease being that and to be part of the all principle. The way is very clear. We've been talking about it for years here. It's in the books. So it always comes down to you making up your mind which you want to be. But you don't know, you see, human trees are stupid. They're made of wood, right? And they can't understand anything but their own isolated existence. They have blockhead minds. And blockhead minds can't at all comprehend the nature which put them here in the first place. There's no way they can understand it. What a human tree can do, therefore, is not understand nature at the start, but understand its own false nature. To understand that it's stupid, self-defeating, atrocious for a human tree to say, I want to live forever. That's not the way it goes. That's not nature's plans. The expression never lives forever. It's constantly being replaced. But the nature itself is eternal. If a human tree can begin to understand just what was talked about so far this morning, it can then make the choice of giving up its vanity of wanting to have the prettiest trees in the forest, the leaves in the forest, the more apples or oranges on it or whatever, cease to be in competition with other trees and not have a life of its own, no more isolated life, which causes fear of extinction. Not have that, but to see that it can have eternal existence by being a part of the eternal plan of God, nature, reality. You will feel and understand what I am talking about and what nature has offered, presented to every human being as you understand the futility of trying to live forever in your present state. This is not the way things work. Get it through your head. Last night, we had various discussions on certain things, which you know about, some of you. And one summary of what we talked about last night is this. You, in your old egotistical nature, you can't win. You can't impose your own ideas on God, on other people even, only in a very sick way. You just can't win. So, why don't we all lose and see exactly what that loss consists of? And you will someday look up to heaven and you will say, thank God for what I lost. What I lost was a sure plunge toward extinction because I was simply a very confused, mixed up, egotistical individual who didn't even want at one time to study these ideas. Is God eternal? You know that. There's something in you. It must be something behind this coming and going of human beings and of trees. There must be something that starts the tree, says, okay, fade out, and then starts another. If you want to be a part of the thing that lasts forever and forever and ever, that is out of time, then it means the surrender of the blockhead mind, of the tree mind. Do that, and you will understand what I'm talking about, what reality is presenting to you. So, carry the illustration a little farther. Here's one little tree way out in the prairie, all alone out there. The description of that particular tree is isolation. Separate? Don't you feel separate? You're separate even from other people in this room. You're afraid of them, for example. Isn't that separation? Look, you go like that. You don't see yourself going like that, but internally you're doing that, so you're separated. You cannot throw yourself all together in your own life. I was watching that the other night. Someone at the piano there. I was seeing isolation even in such a simple thing as playing the piano, where this individual, because of internal problems and blockage and misunderstanding, could not be one with the music, one with herself in expressing. Now, have you ever seen an instance of an individual, maybe at the piano or doing anything, where they and their action was one undivided thing? There was no strain. It was beautiful to you, wasn't it? The word spontaneity, that will do it, won't it? Spontaneous, free, all thrown into it, no division. There was just one thing going on. There was no operator and the operation. That's division, isn't it? And that's strain. No operator and the operation, but the operator and the operation were one single thing. Now, that is the absence of isolation, of separation. That means not being the little tree out on the prairie or a tree anywhere else, but a tree that understands its present location in time. We're in time, our physical body's in time, and also understands that you can transcend time by ceasing to want to be the most beautiful tree in the forest and ally yourself instead with a power that presents it into the world. I was reading a very interesting article about a man. You'll see how this connects with what we're talking about. A man named Matthew Flinders. Who is Matthew Flinders? He was a British navigator, Englishman, who, a couple hundred years ago, he sailed all around the world, especially around Australia. And as a little sidelight, he was one of the first navigators, captains, to notice that if you had iron in the ship, anywhere in the ship, it would throw the compass off. He studied it. He saw how they were trying to go in a certain way, and the compass would go off, and he didn't know why in those days. He finally connected with some iron somewhere back in the cabin or whatever. And so he removed the iron, and the compass went right. There's a good illustration there. Get the iron, the junk away from the steering mechanism, the guide. Let God have his way in guiding the ship, so to speak. But more about Matthew Flinders. Good point. One day he was sailing from Australia with a full crew going back to England. And 800 miles out, they hit a barrier, a reef. I'm not sure what a reef is. I guess it's a coral thing, a little island or something like that. Anyway, they hit a reef and the ship sunk. So they're all stranded. Apparently it was an island where they could stay. So they all clambered off the sinking ship and got on the island. And before the ship went down, they got from it one of the smaller boats they had on it, a large oar boat, I guess you call it. Oaring boat. So Matthew Flinders left most of the crew on the island with supplies, got in this small boat, and set sail to go back to Australia to get a rescue ship, to come back to the reef and then take them on to England. So he set off, left most of them there on the island, went back to Australia. Here's the point. Spiritual point. Imagine the thoughts of the crew left on the reef. Let's say half of them were worried. Is this captain reliable? Is he? Look, they're isolated, aren't they? Look how isolated they are. They're at the mercy of one man, one man's whim. Maybe he decided. Some of them thought that maybe for some personal advantage, the captain would forget about them, just leave them there to perish and go on his way for some reason or other. Or what if the ship sank, their little boat sank on the way back, so they wouldn't be able to. All these thoughts would go through your mind if you're there, wouldn't you? So here they were, worried about their position. The other half of the crew knew the captain. They understood him. They knew he was reliable. They knew he was an honorable man who would never desert anyone. That he was skilled. You have to get a little spiritual application here. That he was stronger than the waves, which truth is, of course. They had no problem at all, did they? This is what they call trusting reality, trusting God. So anyway, to conclude the story, the captain finally got back to Australia, got a ship, came back, rescued the rest of the crew, and they went on to England safely. You don't know the captain. All you know is your own thoughts. And will you guarantee yourself, instead of me guaranteeing you guarantee yourself that your thoughts are always insecure. You can't trust them, can you? You can't trust your own ideas. And the most fearful ideas are the ones that you call hope and praying. Suppose the fearful men on the reef, suppose they said, we're going to pray that the captain is faithful, and they hope that he is, and they encourage each other among themselves and say, well, I know that he must be a very good man. I saw him going to church one time. He was a good man, so he'll probably come. See, self-convincing. Isn't there pain in that? Wouldn't you like to stop convincing yourself in the painful way that you're doing that all is well? Now, I'll tell you a fact. Here's a fact. Not from opinion or belief, but simply a fact that stands all by itself. The spiritual captain of the life ship is 100% reliable, faithful. See, our limited minds think that God thinks like we think. Wow. See, do you ever think of that? Look, all you have is a certain way of thinking. Now you must project that onto anything else outside of you. And you think that God is like you are. It'd be pretty horrible if he was, right? But you must understand that this is you attributing certain things to God that he doesn't have. There's no way your mind can understand what reality is like. The absence of the mind can understand it. The half of the crew that knew what the captain was like, they were at perfect ease. They knew they would be rescued. You can know the very same thing if you get to know the captain, which is the same thing as being in a spiritual alliance with him, with God, with reality. To know what he is like by dwelling with his spirit. What prevents it? You know what the word blackmail means? First of all, take the word itself, blackmail. A person sends a threatening letter to another person filled with dark threats. Blackmail, black letter, right? So we got that technicality out of the way. Blackmail means that one person knows or thinks he knows something about another individual and sends him a letter or tells him personally, unless you pay me, I will expose you for what you are, the criminal act you committed or some secret that is known about them. And by the way, legally, to get into the legal for a minute, it's the threat that counts. If you threaten anyone in any way with exposure, trying to extort money from them, whether it's true or not, that's blackmail. It's the threat. Guess what? You are the blackmailer and you are the victim. Huh? Who else? Who else? We're talking about your personal life, about your inner condition. And this is where the idea of understanding the great number of people inside of us will help. There's all kinds of things. And one of them is the blackmailer. Now, think for yourself. You do a little work. Have you ever threatened yourself? Accused is better. Have you ever accused yourself of something? You do it all the time, don't you? Have you ever been look at all the parallels in the blackmail that we're talking about. Have you ever been afraid of exposure? That someone is going to find you out? Now look, the problem is human beings will not find themselves out. They won't find out, for example, that they are egotistical trees wanting to be prettier than the next tree. We refuse to find ourselves out for fear of what we see, of course. The blackmailer has no chance at all. The inner blackmailer inside of you has no chance at all as long as you understand what is going on and then you transcend, and I'll use a term commonly used in spiritual books, which we can do better than, then you transcend mental dualism. That means transcending the opposites. That means transcending both the blackmailer and the person being blackmailed. If you understand that you yourself have called yourself a victim and that created the blackmailer, if you understood that, both the blackmailer and the victim would disappear. And these are simply wild, stupid, self-centered thoughts operating. I've told you the very fundamental, foundational reason why human beings indulge in accusing themselves and then being afraid of the accusation. Because then you can be the all-powerful blackmailer who's going to get something, going to get money or an advantage of some kind. You can switch your identities as often you want and still feel safe, but it's not safe at all. You can be the powerful blackmailer who's got something on someone else. You ever notice the pleasure you get when you can get something on someone else, catching them in a mistake or whatever? Then you're the blackmailer and you've got an I, you've got a self, correct? Or you want to switch roles, you can switch your roles to being a victim and look at all the possibilities there. If you're the victim of a blackmailer, you can hate him, you can resist him, you can do whatever you want. But you're a person who's being blackmailed, and half the world is one and then the other, and then they switch back and forth. Look at the individuals and the groups that love to be victims. You're a victim of the blackmailer, victim of other persecuting people. So it is really the false pleasure, false security of being able to call yourself this or that, and that is what must go. You won't be talking to yourself all day long like you now do, first taking this side and accusing, and then striking back with the other voice. How many of you talk to yourself? Huh? Idiot conversation, right? To make it even more stupid, it's two trees talking to each other. Two potential blockheads talking to each other. There is great pain-pleasure in being victimized. Circumstances? By circumstance? How many of you are in circumstances you don't like? You're all in internal, if nothing else. You're in certain circumstances that you don't like. I'm talking about psychology now, the inner for now. You're in circumstances you don't like. Why don't you give them up? They exist in here. They exist in your world of isolated living. Why don't you give them up right now, so that you can walk freely? By the way, a tree is fixed in position. It can't go anywhere, can it? Can't walk anywhere. Excuses. Let me tell you who you hang around with. Let me tell you who some of your favorite friends are. Excusing thoughts. You understand that? Do you understand that you're always giving yourself a way out, why you shouldn't face yourself, why you shouldn't get rid of both the blackmailer and being the victim of the blackmailer? Search out and see why you hang around with dozens of thought excuses which you don't see. And this is why, see, that my difficulty in giving you a talk is that when I tell you something, give you good ideas, you can't personalize them. I say that you have a gang of excusing thoughts that operate all day long inside of you, giving you excuses for not working harder, for not abandoning egotism. And I say that, and you're listening to me, but your minds are molasses minds. They don't work fast enough so that the minute I give you the clue, you can't immediately go down deep inside of yourself and make a connection that would cause you to automatically nod. And that there is legitimate automatically nodding when you really see something. It happens, doesn't it? Because the little light shines and it expresses itself physically. It's proper, and most of the time, lots of time, for the inner to express itself outwardly. And you could nod, I see something like that. But when talking with you, you can't do that. So let's start all over, and let me remind you that each of you here is loaded with excuses that you associate with mentally for the purpose of making it easy on you. And the easier you make it on yourself, the harder you make it on yourself. Because now you're going to have to stay isolated. There is thinking, which has its proper place, and there is seeing, which has the major place. Because the seeing comes down and then can instruct the thinking, and then your thinking is all right. But of course, the seeing is the all, capital A-L-L. Now, question. During the talk this morning, where were you? I know you're listening to the words. Were you following the rule to take the words and the spirit behind it, which I know most of you are sensing, taking the spirit of what was said, and then excusing nothing inside, exposing your inner condition, so that when these truths came out to you, they first caused a new confusion, which is necessary. Because the new confusion is all these thoughts battling and not wanting this truth, but you're facing them. You're letting your old nature, old thoughts come up so that when the truth comes in, it hits into them and they get scattered and don't know what to do. Were you in that state of a new confusion, which also a right part in you was sensed that it was the proper course? Because at the moment of the diffusion of your 10 different thoughts and selves inside of you, at that moment, as truth came in and scattered them, there was no single dominating self that could resist or would resist, because they're all scattered. So for a moment, there was an open space that truth could get in among all these darting thoughts, could get in and get past to your spirit. And when it hits the spirit, it hits a bell, right? And rings the bell in your mind. So my question, which I'll repeat, are you going to, from now on, when you hear talks, hear it with a spirit that says, I invite you, truth, to come in and upset me, disturb me, scatter me, all you want, because I sense that it is for my real eternal benefit. I sense that. Do you have that sensing? All right. So from now on, when you hear talks, you will have the attitude of, come ahead and do whatever you want, because I can't do anything but wrong with my mind. When these truths come out, my mind distorts them, refuses them, or whatever. So from now on, I'm going to have an attitude of receptivity so that you, truth, can come in and get past my mind and teach me what I need to know in order to change inwardly. So we come back to the simple but beautiful lesson of self-receptivity, of letting truth do for us what we can't do for ourselves. How nice. How nice that that exists and we can have it. The path to heaven leads through hell. Do you understand that? We have to go through the agony of giving up our identity of being a separate, beautiful little peachy tree on the prairie. Let's see the hands of you who think you're peachy trees. The hands of those who know you're nutty trees with plenty of sap. All right. Small examples lead to great examples. Small successes lead to major successes. But you have to start in small things. For this reason, for it to succeed in small things, therefore, we'll have talks only by people 3 feet tall or less. How many of you have ever got into trouble in your life? How many of you ever got into trouble in your life through your own sheer stupidity? How many of you had a lot of hard work getting out of the trouble you got into? You know, and it's still haunting you now, right? Everybody look at Alicia, both. All right. You see, look, do you know what you are? Oh, I better not tell you. You are one-sided people. You're lopsided people. You walk like that spiritually and psychologically. Now, here's what I mean by that. You know how much work and grief and trouble it is, and expense it is to get out of trouble once you foolishly fell into it, right? Now listen to how you're going to be balanced from now on by what I'm going to tell you. You have never, it has never occurred to you how much work it took for you to get into trouble. See, right? It's the first time you ever thought about that. Look at all the energy, all the foolishly spent energy, all the time, all the desires that you have, that you spent walking right into the trap. And then it closed on you, right? Now, here's the point. From now on, you will be balanced by seeing how hard you have to exert yourself to get into trouble. You really, believe it, you don't just fall into trouble. You have to work hard for it. And if you'd cease to work for it, you wouldn't head toward it, therefore you wouldn't fall over the cliff. Isn't that a new revealing thought? You better write that one down and take it so you can see that your state of psychic sleep is the hard work, is the labor. If you do that, if you take this one little thing we talked about this morning of you seeing how much energy, how much wastefulness it takes for you to get into trouble, it will begin to balance you, and then you will begin to go uphill spiritually instead of downhill. And that's what I really want to explain this morning. When you're born into this world, you're born in a state that is more or less level spiritually, psychologically. Everyone is. And we develop physically, mentally, along a level line. At a certain point, and then there's no fixed point, many points, the level line, spiritual line, psychological line, begins to change. It either it ceases to be level. It always ceases to be level, and it either starts to go uphill or downhill. Now, the beginning decision that you make, which is made by you choosing downhill or uphill, in one sense, starts after you've had a few experiences in life, and it could start as early as 8 or 9, 10 years old, where the pattern that you develop begins to show itself in either uphill or downhill living. Downhill means very simply you get unhappier, you get more confused, you get more hostile. Criminals are always on the downhill road. Few people, as you should know by now, ever leave the level in order to go upward. Almost everyone goes along the level. Then, I'm just pulling this figure out of the air because it's over a period of time, from the time they're 8 to the time they're 20. The decision has been definitely made for downhill with most people, which, as I said, means that they're going to be desperate human beings for the rest of their lives, pretending that they're all right, pretending that they have the answers while suffering from the agony of knowing that they're deceiving themselves.